Board of Finance meeting for April 8th, 2013 to order. We have a full vote, so we don't need to see anybody. Entertain a motion to approve the minutes from March 11th, 2013.
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Minutes approved.
I abstain.
I'm going to abstain.
I had no correspondence. Anyone? All right. Item 4, visitor and public comment. Would anybody like to be heard?
Yes, I didn't have correspondence. I did send all of you an email over the weekend, which I hope everybody got. Did anybody not get a copy?
I did not get it.
Yeah, so I hope you will weigh that. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention, we just conducted a little survey among some of our people to find out why they didn't attend your meeting, and those that did, why they didn't speak. And I mean, kind of the pattern here, this is somewhat preliminary, is they really didn't think you were listening or would listen. So
I'm sorry, what did you say? I wouldn't know.
you weren't listening.
Well, you're good, Jan.
Anyway,
You're good,
just
Tom.
pass that around. And I hope you will weigh what we sent to you. We put a lot of effort into it. And,
Was this the email that I did the second?
no, this is the, you didn't get one?
I did not.
You got new members.
I
Right.
was on the emails.
Okay. Yeah, some of the emails came back, so. Good, thank you.
You have everybody's email?
You get a copy?
Yeah.
Okay, item 5, we can talk about the town budget now, but I don't see, other than Mary Ann, I don't see Jack and
I
Deb.
know Jack's trying to reach out to you today.
Tony was coming back from Hartford and that,
He met with the Commissioner of Education at 5:30 with Deb, and so
have you heard from him?
I haven't, he said he would try and call me along the way.
You might want to
He
give him a ring.
just called me, actually.
Okay, you might want to give him a ring. All right, so let's consider finalize the town budget. We're open, floor is open.
I bring to your attention two things. One is the appropriated surplus item of $250,000, which this Board of Finance did not address, and how it got into the budget. In the first place, is beyond me without a motion to put it in. I'd like to know who did put it in. And the other thing is that in terms of surplus, which I have asked Mr. Curry to give me information on, but he has not given it to me. The charter of the town, under section 10.2, preparation of the budget, item C4, says an estimate of the available cash surplus or deficit at the end of the current fiscal year to be included in the proposed estimate. And C says the proposed budget shall include, but not limited to, the following items, and that's 4. And we haven't addressed that, ever. So, I open that to discussion. Section 7.344 under appropriations, which is the state's version of our charter, doesn't hold, but that's where it comes from. And in a case that the state decided at Caulfield was the language of that statute, requiring that a general fund surplus in the town budget be applied to reducing the tax rate for the upcoming fiscal year. So, we don't know, and we can only estimate what the surplus is going to be, but we have to have our finance director give us a closer estimate of what it is before we can even consider it. There may be deficits as well. So, Mr. Curry, we have a general idea of whether the town has a surplus?
You have an estimated number on the
I have not
operational
done any
surplus?
estimates on the town. I got your email late Thursday, and I spoke to Brad about it a little bit, and we have never done one, so I haven't had a chance to really work on it since late Thursday.
Why would you talk to Brad about it, not me? I sent you the email.
Well, he's the chair of the Board of Finance. And
I'm
I was
vice chair, I'm vice chairman.
I was asking if the town has ever done one in the past, and I was told, no, they have not. Because I was going to look for it and try and
Well-
update it.
Well, there would be no appropriated surplus ever if the town had never considered a surplus. Because that's the only place we could possibly draw down a surplus. Well,
Well, one of the facts is that a surplus is not a surplus until the audit is completed.
that's right.
So for you to draw surplus monies from an unaudited figure would not be appropriate.
And the case that you cite, one of the things that you run into with those cases is the local rule statute usually overrules all of those cases.
Right, that's why I'm looking at our chart.
It's in our charter.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as the estimate goes, we know what our audited surplus is.
Yeah, but that's for last fiscal year.
Well, that's the most
It's the only accurate one we
up-to-date
have.
number that we have.
It's the only accurate one we have. But that's not what the statute or the charter says. It doesn't reflect us back to last year's audited numbers.
Go figure, ambiguity in the law.
Who knows?
But maybe we're just a year behind, like, I don't think we ever saw how that audited number came into the undesignated number that we've been working with. Is it included in the undesignated number?
The
that-
surplus is in the general fund.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
The only way the undesignated surplus is adjusted is your results from operations, which are your revenues over your expenditures,
Or vice versa.
or vice versa if you have a
Yeah.
deficit.
So we
Last year
started
we
the
had a
year with
deficit.
6.7, so that included the fiscal 6.7.
Right, and that's been
That's
drawn
right.
down
That's
to
exactly right.
Or it has been drawn.
4.666.
And then as far as the appropriated item, the 250,000, that was done 2007?
Whenever Jerry was still chairman, and I'm guessing 7 is probably the most recent, because I think that's when we did run again.
And we leave it in there because.
But we got rid of it one year, but then it magically appeared again.
No, and then we had discussions in 2010 with Rosemary, extensive discussions about the appropriated surplus.
But
And whether or not to do away with it completely, or whether to go
if
150.
you look at the actual 2011-12, it disappears.
The reason it disappears is because it wasn't utilized.
It wasn't utilized.
And then why would it be brought?
Because that's
Why is it
actual.
brought forward now?
Well, you can't carry it forward without the approval of the Board of
We didn't
Finance.
use it, but then why did we bring it back? Is the
It was
question.
there when I did the numbers.
I understand you weren't here for 12-13, but
Right.
it should have never reappeared because we didn't consider it last year.
No, it hasn't been discussed in years.
Right, we haven't discussed it, just
I believe
there.
it was budgeted. I think it was budgeted last year.
I'm sure we talked about it.
I think it was budgeted last year, it just wasn't used.
Well, more importantly, we have an opportunity to discuss it this year.
Right now.
I mean, it was,
on the table.
it was,
What happened was, Alex Nick, you're here now, talking
yeah,
about
if you look
this.
at the proposed revenue, that was included in the current year budget.
Yeah, it's in there.
It's in there.
It hasn't been taken
What
out.
people are saying is probably we didn't talk about it prior to approving the budget last year of putting it in there, like we had the year before that, and like we are about to do now, discussing it. It probably just got put in there last year without discussion, quite frankly.
So we used to get, like with Kevin, we used to get like a monthly financial report that showed budget versus actual. I haven't been getting those.
I have.
No, I haven't either.
And that-
Okay,
I was-
so it
I was
does
gonna
seem-
mention
So it
that.
does seem to me that by virtue of those, we should be able to eyeball, some of that and kind of by this point in time, see what a
I'm
potential.
not.
Well, we're doing that with Board of Ed,
No,
aren't we?
Yeah, but you don't get the revenues,
I
you
can
don't
tell you
get the
right now,
expenditures.
I think it's safe to assume we're gonna have a deficit this year, guys.
Oh, you don't get the revenues, that's right.
How much have we
The
given
revenues.
Pete for the last 2 storms? That wasn't budgeted. 1.3. How much? 1.3. There you go.
But those
that
funds
comes
were
out-
appropriated.
No, I understand that, but I'm just saying on a budgetary basis, it's gonna break even at best, but on an accrual basis, we lost money.
Right, well, or on a basis of budget versus actual, sometimes you look like you have a surplus, but it really has to be on the basis of revenues versus expenses, which is what we're saying, so.
Right.
We don't get revenues, and maybe we should get that.
Well, we get updates.
We get updates and expenditures, but it's kind of tough to keep monthly
Yeah,
jogging our own ledger.
right.
Usually if they're not close, we get told.
Right. Well, so that's the thing, it does seem like the 250, to me, you know, was a placeholder for, you know, the audited statements, and I think what you said at the public hearing, which was, that's even a risky number, no matter what's in there, is, you know, because the opposite could happen.
We all agree with that.
Yep.
We all agree with that.
Yes.
I agree.
That's why we did away with it 3 years ago, and how it resurfaced.
I never,
No, I
I never
taken
remembered
it
it
out. We've never
doing
taken
away
it out.
with it. I
It's
just,
been in there
if-
since we voted to put it in
Right.
there with Jerry.
the only thing that could have happened is it's been placed in there without discussion like this, but I don't remember us discussing and saying, we're not gonna do it anymore.
I don't remember discussing that it was, yeah.
And we were gonna do it again.
We discussed it last year because the East Haven appropriated surplus came up.
Yeah.
We were given an article and a memorandum about it.
I don't know.
Again-
You're probably right, but I just don't remember.
Again, let's discuss what we're gonna do this year.
Well, I'm confused.
Do we wanna leave it, are we going to put $250,000, or let's say it this way, leave the placeholder in the 250 of revenues, or are we going to take it out? If we take it out, that adds to your
The taxpayer.
taxpayer, to your mill rate. Because you will then have to, you'll have to decrease your revenue side,
Right.
and
We're
That would be,
artificially creating $250,000
I know, I
in
agree,
revenue.
so I'm actually a little confused why you agree with taking it out, when I think you were pointing to the part in the charter that says we're allowed to consider surpluses.
I am.
And we're sort of, you know, that's, to me, it sounds like historically, that's sort of the way the board considered the surplus. You know, we can choose to, you know, have maybe, do you call it arbitrary, or, because, like you said, the time, what we're really struggling here with is timing. Like, we just don't know, we're all happy to consider surpluses, but God forbid they're not real. And that's, I think,
Well,
what
the guy with the long tooth
difficulty
on the
is.
board here was on the board when the Board of Finance agreed to take the surplus and reduce the budget in 1987, I believe. Wiped us out and almost put us bankrupt. And it was there going forward that we agreed, well, that will never happen again.
Right.
And we at then time said, not only that, but we're going to make sure that we can build this surplus up to then was, we thought, a safe cushion of 5%, which is now a minimum of 10%, which is, like you said, Doug, they're now looking at 15%. Why on a non-inflationary time, interest rates aren't going anywhere? I don't know. Why.
Right, but the rest of the world is inflating, right? That's what
The
that's
rest
what
of the
you're
world's
saying.
falling apart.
Yeah, the inflation isn't being reflected in our numbers because of interest rates, and because the housing situation is such a disaster.
Right.
When that changes, or when the Federal Reserve stops printing money, they're saying, Katie, borrow the dog.
Exactly. No, you will get inflationary
Right.
economies. I agree.
Pressure's going to happen, and interest rates will go up.
So that's what the government officers,
Right.
the FOIA, whatever, the government financial officers.
No, but I don't think Doug's inconsistent. I think we should consider it, but the answer should always be, agree?
I'm perfectly willing.
I can't vote, so I'm just bringing these to the floor. Not what I'm here to
Take
do.
an appropriated surplus out of the revenue side of the budget.
The revenues go and then surplus goes. Right?
You know, I mean, if, I don't know what we're gonna end up with after operations this year. I mean, I just have no idea.
It may be a deficit, may well be a deficit.
If you look at the audit, it seems like more money came out of the undesignated
You did,
last year than,
$1,000,004.
that's it.
Now, we know from FEMA there may be, but it may come,
No,
well into next year. Well,
But if it's at, it could be July 2nd, and, you know.
It may be just used to replace what we've had to overspend this year for the last two storms.
Now, you could, But you can deal with surplus just by saying, we know that the Board of Education is
Right.
coming in with some kind of a surplus.
We all seem to be confident in that, though, at the last meeting.
There's a confidence level in that. There seems to be anyhow.
Okay.
That's only an expenditure side.
So we don't have a revenue side. Is that what
Or
you're
that
saying?
doesn't have revenue, the town.
Well,
doesn't
the
have
town,
revenue.
right.
Should have gotten your revenue by now, shouldn't
If there's, a revenue's just from the state.
That comes in at the end of April.
you? Okay.
That's just
And
what
that's
the
your big
state.
nut, right?
That's a pretty big one, that's about 3 million right there.
Yeah.
But the indication is that there's somewhere in the neighborhood of $600,000 of surplus, right?
I think it was 866 on my one.
It was 865, it was in that range. The,
And then we did, the last estimate I presented to the Board of Education included CIP, capital improvements, so that brought it down a couple hundred
Oh,
thousand.
okay.
right, now, we approved, was it, we left 100 and, at the last meeting, how much did we
We left in
No, we
200.
asked them to please appropriate a certain amount of it for this year.
Right.
Was it 180?
I think they asked for 100 and we cut it by 200. So we did it by specific project.
It's just over 200 a year now.
Did the number you published was 209?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what they have in their capital for next year.
But they asked for
209.
We left that.
We left that there.
And the rest of it,
209.
they were applying surplus.
Exactly.
Which is, another way to go around the tax rate rather than have the safety jack.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, so it seems to me like, what we seem to be hearing about how we should consider surplus in the next year's budget, it kind of seems to me like we are in those two ways.
Every year, Val, every year we do the same.
We do that, okay. So
The alternative is you demand the Board of Ed return the surplus to the undesignated fund, and we keep capital higher, instead of cutting it by 50%.
The Board of Education doesn't return any. It's always in the general
I was
fund
gonna say,
until
it's
they
not,
take it down.
return it from where?
Until they take down
It's-
money on an expense, it's in the general fund.
I mean, it's spending it,
It's not spent.
Well, but I would agree, it's the same way that we don't technically return money to the taxpayers, but there is a taxpayer benefit to the process that we are doing. By,
If you lower his mill rate, you're benefiting the taxpayer. If you increase his mill rate, you're not benefiting the taxpayer.
And we did, in fact, lower the tax rate for next year, or his mill rate, because we're allowing the Board of Ed to buy things off their capital list that they would have presented next year, this year,
I don't know if
with
it's
this year's surveys. So they're buying
I don't
it.
think you can look at that.
Well, that's how it is.
We're not allowing it, we're recommending.
We'll recommend it. They're gonna buy things that they would have bought next year out of next year's CEC, which would have cost the taxpayers more.
Yeah, but our power to tax is limited to this 12-month sequence.
It's this fiscal year.
I understand that.
but I agree with what you're saying in that, we were presented over the past few months with a presentation of needs. And so we actually were presented with, here's what would have been, had there been no surplus. It got reduced, so here's what it is now. And that's kind of the way that I'm pleased that the discussion has gone. It was based on needs, and we reduced it based on specific projects that they said they could get done, rather than, and I've always hated just randomness of slashing, $400,000 just because, so. I'm like,
Well, I thought the discussion was that we were upping the amount of money that we use in this fiscal year out of the surplus
yeah,
to 209,000.
no, we left 209,000.
No, it's a difference between what they had asked for and 200.
We left 209 capital.
It was
It
like,
Okay.
has
added
to be close to
200.
the same number, because if
Because Board of Selectmen cut to 100, right?
cut them 200, yes.
Board-
and
Board of
we add
Selectmen
back
have to
another
separate it.
89. Yes.
You're really mixing apples with pears here.
CE.
CEC, the Board of Education had a CEC originally of, let's see, let me get to my notes here in my book.
400, right?
Yeah, about 4 something.
Or something, and then,
And
and then
then-
the Board of Selectmen, when they came to us, said, we're cutting that to 100.
That's
The discussion
correct.
that Valerie presented
Right.
to the Board of Finance brought it back up to 209, and that was approved based on the projects that Jack said he could accomplish, right?
Or at least appropriate.
Well, we kind of backed into that, like it was a total of 400, he told us what he could accomplish with the surplus, and that left us with 209. So we kind of backed into it.
Exactly.
That left us with 209.
Well, I'm sorry, that left the budget, the CEC budget at 209. So we approved that, which effectively increased it by 100,000 over what the Board of Selectmen approved.
109.
Yes.
Right,
Right, so the Board of Selectmen was at 100,
correct.
eventually we added 109.
But what they asked for was 400.
Right, but the number we came up with at the end of the day was $209,000
Yes.
for next year
Yes.
Capital expenditure,
capital expenditure.
Yes.
Board of Education,
Right.
correct.
Now, that has nothing to do with the surplus of this fiscal year.
Well, it does in the fact that they presented us with a list of needs, and then they went through and identified,
Specifically.
you know, the $190,000 worth of those needs that they could do before June 30th.
There you go.
Okay, so that backs out, let's say 200, that
Correct.
backs out 200 from the alleged 865.
Correct.
Correct.
So that left the surplus around 665.
And I was actually gonna say too, which is why I sort of feel comfortable with the 250, because, so, you know, we backed out 200 out of 665, if we have an appropriated surplus of 250 in there, you know, we're at 350, and that could be, you know, maybe it comes in and maybe it doesn't, but I think it's a good due diligence for the fact that we do consider a surplus when we create the budget.
Well, yeah, I mean, one of the things was to spend $500,000 of the surplus to buy the capital improvements. Instead of appropriating it in the budget to spend, I don't know what the number was, it was like 540,000 or something like that.
What's that?
The call that the Board of Selectmen gave the CEC.
Yeah, it was roughly about $560,000 that he was going to try to buy out of undesignated surplus until we found out undesignated got
Really
sort of
close to
chopped up
10%.
real good because of the,
Storms.
yeah, all the storms and the WPCC allocation of
And
$414,000.
retention
Let's
case.
not forget that one.
160 for the market.
Was it
Heart and hypertension,
new accounting system?
yeah, it was,
Right,
well,
but
that
the new
was,
accounting system was paid from
that
last
was-
year's surplus.
no, no. The finance software accounting system, $300,000 was allocated this year after July 1st.
After July
It
1st.
came off the top of that.
On the 7th.
There you go. That's what our first withdrawal, if you will, of the new year was $300,000 for the finance software. Then you had Hurricane Sandy, then you had Charlotte, and you had WPCC amendment, you had H&H settlement, Stanton House was in there for 30, Solace Points for 165, and then lately we did an adjustment for Irene for 96,101. So that's where we're at, $4,666,338.
$2.5 million.
So, but
So if we were to do away with the appropriated surplus line item, how else could we address the surplus for the benefit of the taxpayer?
Well, to me, that would then, if we ended up with a surplus, it would directly go into undesignated versus like what Brad has always said, versus we start off the year in a negative position. So you're either taking the surplus to fund,
We what? We never start off in a negative.
if you have the 250 in there, you do,
No, because we built an artificial revenue on the other side.
which means that your expenses are $250,000 higher than what you expect in revenue. So you're starting out
No,
right.
we have
It's
said.
artificial.
Yeah, it's all artificial.
I know, but so that's what I mean, so if you have the 250,000 in there, the surplus is immediately going to fund the fiscal 14 expenses, up to 250,000. Versus if you take it out, the surplus
back to
is going to
designated surplus.
undesignated, and now you're voting on it for whatever you want to vote on.
Yes, that's right.
So that's the difference.
The 250 is a planned use of the
Right.
undesignated.
It's an encumbrance, more or less to speak, against next year's budget.
Right, and if you don't use it, then nobody knows any different.
Exactly.
Because it's just sitting there.
And it's
and
been
not
there
used.
for about 4 or 5 years.
But when you spend it, you gotta replace it.
Right.
Or we could raise it. It could be 500,000 this year, and maybe next year it'd be zero.
But if you have to replace it,
Our
you gotta.
undesignated surplus reduces by a like amount.
Right.
And we're running below the 10% level that nobody wants to.
No, I know, and the problem is, I mean, someday, maybe we'll get to a point where we don't have to raise the mill rate at all to start with, and then maybe we can start reducing that number that we do hold as a placeholder.
You may not
Cut
have
it
to
to
reduce,
200,
you may
cut it to
spend.
150, start gradually chipping away so it goes down to zero. But to take it all out in 1 year like this year, I think is a little bit too drastic.
It's a big deal.
Because you're going to, that means increase the mill rate
0.2.
accordingly. Well,
0.02?
Yeah, 2.02.
250,000 is about a quarter of a mil, right?
Yeah, it's right
Twenty
about
percent
that.
of them now.
How much?
Mills $1.6 million.
Well, at least 6 is
Right
enough.
about-
A mil is $1.6 million, right, okay.
It's
So,
like 1/10
it's
of it.
about, what, 1/10?
6.1
A little over 1/10 of a mil.
Okay.
I mean, it's not gonna be any kind of drastic change.
Easy.
One way or the
Easy.
other.
Anything that goes up in this,
Go ahead, finish the thought, anything that goes up
no,
is.
anything that goes up,
it's
I
evil. It's
think
anathema.
is a
It's not-
negative thing.
Well, it is negative.
It ultimately is gonna happen that if we continue to arbitrate the revenue side with our surplus, to make it look like we're not spending as much as we are, when that runs out, the tax rate's gonna go up and everyone's gonna be yelling and screaming. And you can't replace, don't use your savings account to buy food. And that's what you're doing here.
So if this is kind of, if this board agrees on that, can you, like amortize it to zero? Or like, let's say over the next 3 years?
There's only one thing to do, is you gotta get rid of it somehow, or at least cut it in half, or that's all you have to do.
Right.
Don't take as much out of the surplus as we've been unknowingly doing.
Okay, I'll go
That's
for
what I
that.
would
Well,
do.
with all due respect, I've known we've been doing it every year. I mean, it comes up and we talk about it. We do talk about it once a year. I mean, there's a large movement or loud movement that they want us to appropriate surplus to revenue and buy tax relief. And I heard it from 2 speakers at the public hearing.
We earned it up to $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, that's just, I think that's.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
Not
I'm
smart.
saying we have to come to a decision, and
Right, so.
I can't even vote on it, so.
Right, well, I mean, the choices are leave it as is, reduce it by some amount incrementally, or reduce it completely.
Right.
But it wasn't the last year's, now that I distinctly remember you saying that you used that term.
about it
We
last year
started
at public
off
hearing.
behind eight ball, right?
It's right on the sheet.
Oh, from last
You
year.
know it's there, you know it's there, it's been there every year
I
for
mean, it's
5
been there
years.
for years, Bob. I mean, since Mr. Campion.
Since
was
Mr.
there.
Campion started, about 5, 6 years.
You know, but back then, we had the sinking funds, and we used to take the surplus and divvy up the surplus and deposit them into sinking funds. Like a hypertension fund, a rescue
Have
fund,
the equipment fund, yeah.
park, you know.
Infrastructure, right, all of the above.
So now it's just the way we look at it now, it tends to be a little bit more conceptual. You know, it's something that we have to think about versus something that we can see in an account or a capital account.
Well, I think at the time we also put 250 aside is because we didn't have ridiculous weather patterns that caused us to spend millions of dollars on it in a year.
We
And
had
our
$7.5 million in surplus.
and our surplus did continue to grow.
Maybe more than that. This is
And
a
it's not
different
growing
era.
now. We're not growing now.
You will be, you don't mind, you will be recouping.
I understand we're getting some.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the process of, you know, we've already been approved for approved, and done the final paperwork for $400,000 just for sand.
The thing is, we are already close to the floor. You know, this board voted on a policy to maintain 10% of whatever the operating budget is. And
That should be
right
coming
there.
relatively quick, but I mean,
And as soon as it does, I'll believe it. Unfortunately, I'm not a government, I'm here to help you. No.
It's a regulation that we have as a board.
they did
One of
that
our
recently,
regulations
they
that-
did that at one point.
You said policy.
So we're sitting right on the cusp. Right.
You know, so, I mean, that brings up the other question of the contingency fund that we have. You know, right now, it's at $150,000.
90.
No, I know,
No, well, we
the
need to-
appropriation
Oh,
request, sorry.
Right. We used to start off at 200.
200.
There was a discussion, I remember, with your former director, our former director, that said we shouldn't have one.
I mean, because, you know, it's just, well, we never use it like a true contingency fund.
No, we don't.
That was one of the big problems with it, and still is.
We use it
We
like
never
an
have.
undesignated
We
surplus.
never use it correctly.
Okay. Right? We use it as a savings account.
How is the contingency fund supposed to be used?
For an emergency. Something that wasn't foreseen in the operating budget, and the department head comes to us and says, hey, I didn't realize that the transmission was gonna drop off one of my heavy trucks, and I need $40,000. Okay, that's what we have a contingency fund for. We've gotten into this cycle
Yeah.
where we have departments coming back and asking for appropriations when they should be appropriately budgeting for the year for everything that they need.
Or being put in CEC and going through that system.
But we cut CPC.
This year we gave a donation to the celebration too, for $14,500.
They add up, 14 here, 20 here, 7 here.
8,000 for a police vehicle, 10,000 for the assessor property audits, which we have talked about, whether or not we should just put that in their operating
We
budget.
have talked about that. and she
We've talked
refused
about it.
She refused it.
And she refused it.
Right. So these are not emergency expenses.
No,
These should be budgeted.
they should be budgeted
Exactly.
on it.
And they're not. Directing towards Lori, right. Contingency is something that, you know, is a surprise. But we use a designated as if it was a
Right.
savings account.
Not a designated.
The
I mean,
difference, we just
contingency.
we dip in constantly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I would be in support of taking the 250 out completely. You know, but I mean, if you want to do it incrementally, you know, make the motion.
Well, let's,
What?
And would you suggest getting rid of the contingency fund
I
also?
was gonna add that, why don't we just do both? Well, I'm trying to prevent somebody from coming and asking for money.
What would we do with contingency that we don't do
We
with
have no
undesignated?
designated surplus.
I just read a whole bunch of stuff off to you, Mr. Chairman, that what we do with contingency. I mean, if the police department comes in and says they hire a police officer all of a sudden and they need money for uniforms or recruitment or sending them off to the academy, we gave them money. I mean, let me go back to the years prior to, let me just read some of the things that you've done out of contingency.
It's just true.
You've done website updates, 6180, that was a couple
But
years
that's
ago.
not an emergency, that's sloppy.
I
planning.
understand that, but those things will come up during the course of the year,
Then we'll take
26,000.
them out undesignated.
Yeah, that's the way you have
Well,
to do
okay,
it.
if you didn't have a contingency
Provided
this
we don't
year.
go below 10%.
Oh, okay, right now in
So then you have
contingency,
to say no.
right now in
Exactly.
undesignated, you've got $64,347 to spend.
As Mr. Sullivan says, if that happens.
So something
we go
comes in above that,
we
what do
say
we do?
no.
We say no, okay.
Okay?
So if another storm hits here tomorrow,
That's an emergency, that's a different act, that's a different animal.
You know,
I
the problem
mean-
is that we're real close to that floor, and look, Dennis, I understand what you're saying, you know, you leave the contingency there, and it feels like a warm blanket, you know, I mean, but it's, essentially, you know, we need to, it's clear that we have to pay attention. I mean, we're real close to the policy limit of 10%, we've got a major debt service that's gonna be coming up in the next couple of years, we have to start building
There's
up
new
that
schools.
surplus. Yeah.
We have water pollution control, we're talking multi-millions there, and it's on the way. So
But
I
I
mean,
also think the contingency could be viewed as more of a constraint, like if you do look in the opposite direction, if all of a sudden we do get $1 million influx, then, you know, just from our own mindset, we think we have $1 million to spend, versus maybe if we just change the mindset of, that because of the debt service coming up, because of water pollution, we never touch undesignated, but we do have contingency of 150,000 and that's it. You know, like, because otherwise, like, it's like cash in your pocket, right? If you have 150 or if you have $1 million, the million kind of feels better. If the tide next year swung the other way, that all of a sudden undesignated is $2 million more than our floor. You know, now we're just in a swash of.
It's gonna make a lot of bond buyers very happy if that occurs.
And I'd love to know where it's coming from.
Yeah, and I'd love to know where that 2 million is coming from. No, I understand where you're coming from, but
It's just, yeah, the contingency feels like actually more of a restraint to me if we use that and never.
I don't know.
But it's not used.
What's causing a panic this year that you didn't have last year, fellas? I mean, when we've been doing this for 3 to 4 years, riding around along here, and all of a sudden now you thought about it and panicking? What
I don't think I'm panicking.
Well, what brings
Oh, I'm
the
not
panic
panicking.
so much today about, well, we gotta get that 250 out of that, we gotta get that placeholder out of there real quick, we gotta cut
Because
contingency,
these are
all this stuff.
legitimate questions that the Board of Finance has to address. The 250 just can't appear miraculously on the budget.
I understand it.
And we have surpluses, or we don't have surpluses, but our charter requires us to address the issue. We
I
haven't
understand
done
that.
so
I understand
in
that
this
very
kind
well.
of forum.
We've had
And that's
surpluses
not
for the
panicking.
last 6 years.
Yes,
Almost $1
and-
million
and still-
a year
and still
between
and
both.
yet- And still and yet, we're right on the cusp of our 10% policy and probably may go below it.
You won't. And you know that because the man right there is telling you, you're gonna get 75% of that money that we just handed out here. $1 million for Sandy, I'll almost say it's back.
Well, the Sandy.
How much is Sandy back?
I'm not
Sandy,
gonna
you have,
hold into it.
Sandy, we've always spent, don't hold me exactly to the number, less than $500,000, and we've applied for way less than $500,000, I believe, only like 300 something, and we've applied for, been approved up now for state review for $415,000. They signed a $400 and something thousand PW. Charlotte, it's less than 300,000, it's less than 250, you appropriate 350. I talked to, just a little while ago, I said, I'm gonna come in, you gotta make a few transfers to cover some overtime accounts, but nowhere near what you spent. And then we'll be able to close that account. That is between now and the insurance, and now it's been declared by FEMA. So that's gonna go out as well. The balance of what's in the C&D account hasn't been designated for anything. The issue we're gonna have, you can close that account at the end of this process, which should be within a month or two. The issue we have is there's 2 major projects out there that are in the FEMA review right now, which is the Causeway and Beach Park Road. Now, whether they're gonna, part of it's mitigation, which they cover 100%, part of it is repair, which they cover 75% of, and it's a balance of how they're gonna break that out in both locations that I'm not quite sure of. So if the Causeway, we're estimating at about a $900,000 project, you know, the town share may be $130,000 out of that 900,000. Beach Park is estimated about $500,000. Town share may be, you know, 125,000 out of that. So I won't have those figures. So I mean, if you choose to disengage those accounts and return everything back to the undesignated, you know, you have to keep in mind that you may have to come back and, you know, reappropriate to cover what the, you know, essentially what the town's responsible for in this project. But everything else is done on both the blizzards.
Right, a lot of reimbursement for Irene is done, right?
Irene, you got reimbursed over $1 million.
But then we had to allocate 96,000 more, right?
You allocated, no,
Yes, we did.
that was already allocated last year, but you
Right.
put it,
It's reallocated.
it was in the operational side of
reallocated.
it, so you couldn't carry it over, so you reallocated.
That came out of this year's undesignated.
Yes, it did, because it
Okay.
was left over from last year's operational in the Irene account.
And let me just say this, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I mean, I'll tell you a thing that's been bugging me for some time, and that's that 414 for Water Pollution Commission. And I'll tell you why. We know or we've gotten a darn good report and a handle on it within the last couple of months, that they are moving forward finally at a great rate, they're doing a great job. They're going to spend millions. They're gonna spend maybe 26 million when it's all over, or 30 million, whatever the first phase is. I wonder why we did not start a bonding account for that Water Pollution Commission to start drawing from, rather than taking $414,000 out of the undesignated. And that's only the beginning. If it was just gonna be a one-time shot, like when we buy a police or a fire truck or something, I could see it. But we know, everybody in this room knows, that we are about to go down the avenue of spending big bucks for a Water Pollution Commission. We should start appropriating money, bond or whatever, so that they can draw from that, rather than us getting hit once every 4 or 5 months for 230 here, 414 here, 90,000 here. That's what sort of throws these books out of balance.
But you can't bond for something that doesn't exist. There's no
And where are we gonna get the, where do you want us to get the money?
Well, okay.
I mean,
I said my piece, that's all.
investors buy a bond, they're guaranteed a certain rate of return based on certain covenants that you make them. And say, these are the projects we're gonna do with your money.
Okay, well, if they come in,
But we have no project, we have no state approval for anything to be done.
And we also don't know what kind of program we're gonna have as far as financing goes. There's gonna be options.
Right?
So we just don't know.
We don't know. We're not there yet.
It never hurts to start planning, because we do know there's a large cost coming up. The problem is,
But that's what
you
you
gotta get the money from
CCC
somewhere,
does.
people are already screaming that they're paying too much taxes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the
And
source of
believe
that
me.
is additional taxes.
and believe me, I'm with you, we would try to do that in CEC, but as you know,
I do know.
when you put stuff like that in CEC, that's some of the first things that get cut.
Right.
You know.
So, this is a round divert.
Defer, not cut.
But I mean, we just keep
Extend it to
going
the
around
future.
in circles, but okay,
Yeah,
let's
we're not
get
going around in
back.
circles, because, you know, the thing is, it's a difference without a distinction, the way we use contingency and undesignated. We don't use contingency fund as if it's a real contingency fund.
Okay, I'm gonna make a motion just to get things really going, really nice, because I like some of Valerie's ideas now. So I'll do a balancing of the budget here. I will make a motion to reduce the contingency fund by $50,000 and also reduce the placeholder in that appropriated surplus from by $50,000, reducing it from 50 down to 200,000.
Is there a second
I'll second.
discussion?
You're advertising.
We're just slowly reducing.
I'm gonna try to slow reduce at the same time, not put a burden on the taxpayer.
It makes sense.
All right, any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. How about?
Hopefully
You're
people.
not seeing.
Oh, that was,
I'm not sick.
5-2, right? 4-2?
Or two.
4-2. All right, so we need to make that change. No, it's a small. It's a start, so absolutely, yes. So 200 appropriated.
And if I can do that every year, I'll get you out of that $200,000 in about 4 years.
Well, I
I'll
think,
be going with it.
you know, well, that is unfortunately what you try to put out every year is always ignored, and that is, we have a 5-year plan, guys, how can we change it every year?
2.1 million were appropriated.
That's true.
745,000 for town.
Doesn't work.
We don't.
It's huge change, people aren't keeping, they're not disciplined into it.
Someone
Vote
told me
nature.
to tell me where,
It's our job.
What's that again?
contingency fund on my budget.
It's on the back page, under all those under CC graduation, alcohol free, right before tree warden is contingency fund of 150. other general government, right before public safety. Front page, right-hand column,
Flip it,
right-hand column, middle of the page,
middle of the page.
middle of the
I
page.
got it.
He's
Right
got
here.
it.
Right here, I got it. So that's 100 now.
As long as Bob has it, because he was gonna have one of the numbers.
All right, any other items on the town side? Any other departments? Anybody want to comment about the public hearing and
Public
changes
hearing
we want to
didn't,
make?
they didn't have you say that. Right?
All right, so we're gonna need a motion to send this to the, well, before I ask for that motion, is there a reason to have another public hearing on the town budget after making these two $50,000 reductions?
I see no reason, but I'm not seated, so I can't vote.
No, I would,
Well, I see it and I agree, I don't see any reason.
I would say your reason,
Isn't this is what we presented to the taxpayers,
Right.
and now these numbers have changed.
Well, if you remember,
the bottom line is not changed.
unfortunately, this is the only thing people pay attention to, how much we have to raise. And unfortunately, what they don't know is they're not voting on that bottom line, they're voting on new spending budgets. That's what they vote on. And the spending budgets haven't changed.
Right. Quite frankly, I did bring up a point not too long ago, about a week ago, whether, I was told in so many words or less that really, we do give the public quite a bit more information on this. We give them an itemized, ba-bing, ba-bing, ba-bing.
Well, we
And
published it
really,
too after tonight. we published it.
really, you only have to give them the bottom line figures.
This can be reduced significantly.
Right.
We could just do the proposed
And
numbers
because,
instead of all the budget items.
right, you don't really have to do every single thing in there,
You guys will change that next year.
so if we change things here, it's okay.
It doesn't reflect, it never stops to say.
He was, one line item.
Right. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's all expenses.
I know, it's hard.
Exactly.
So,
Alright, so we don't need another motion or another budget motion, so, and we're not interested in having another public hearing, so we're done with the town budget. Everyone okay with that? We can move on to education?
Yeah.
Alright, let's move on to education budget. Who wants to be heard on the education budget?
Well, the reaction that I heard from the public hearing was that there were two individuals that wanted us to take a surplus and apply it to the expenses going forward. I think we discussed that pretty much
Kicked it in
ad
the
nauseam. We kicked it around a lot on the town side. I don't know if there's a difference on the education side or not. A surplus is a surplus is a surplus, comes back to the town, and that's it. Does anybody?
because the surplus is reflected in the town's general fund.
Exactly.
So we've kicked it around, it's done.
Beat it to death.
We did,
Thank you.
So are there any proposed reductions or additions to the Board of Education budget? So we'll take a motion to send the Board of Education budget as proposed to the budget meeting.
So second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. It was easy, right, Jack? You brushed it back and you didn't have to say anything. So, you gonna talk, Major, about the budget update?
Huh?
Mr. D,
But you can't let the girl make a change.
Yes. Good. Oh, I thought we did.
Yeah, no,
All right, everyone listen up.
I'll make a motion, we approve the town budget with the two amended changes
And send it to the
and send it to.
budget.
Second.
Discussion, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you, whoever pointed that out.
Former chairman. There's been a lot of these.
Thank you, sir.
It's better than we. A lot of former. Let's go spend more.
All right. What are you here to report on?
Normally, we come and do the budget update, we went to Board of Selectmen last, probably 2 meetings ago, just organizing my stuff and introducing this meeting. We're projecting to be about $105,000 over on overtime this year. So, not to leave you hanging with that number, but it's not as bad as we talked about in the beginning of the first quarter we came, you know. We've had about 5 guys, what,
First quarter, you were talking a couple $100,000.
200 and 225.
Yeah,
ballpark,
right.
105, and that's projected on the numbers that we ran, March 26th. It's the same report that I gave the Board of Selectmen. I am going to give a small, more updates that I didn't give them, the chief didn't give them. Projected about 105, like I said, over. Right now, with Officer Smith overseas in Afghanistan, we're not paying his salary. So the police department line item has an additional ballpark $70,000 in that salary line item. We budgeted one doing overseas. We don't pay his salary because he's getting paid by the government. Yeah.
100%, huh? Okay, I always thought there was something that the town also
We
contributed.
did, but because he's a staff sergeant and getting combat pay, his pay over there is only due to make here, so there is no offset. Normally we would pay the difference between the military pay and the pay he would make here.
Once we go to break.
Because it's rank though, and insurance.
Because it's rank,
Yeah,
yes.
insurance.
Well, he remembers when he got $21 a month.
Yeah, I think it's more than that.
Spanish American.
I spoke to Mr. Cross, and we're gonna get that $17,000 that they're paying towards our SOO costs. So that's $87,000 towards that 105. Kerwin so far has given the town back about $23,000 and some change in payments for our injury costs. Those come back sporadically, so that's what we got so far this year. So with those two, that's $110,000. And I know it's not my job to tell you where to get the money from. I'm just showing you that there is some savings in other line items, so it's not as bad as, like, say, $105,000 over.
I think that would be a good one to bring next month, is to see, if you're getting closer to the end, where you think you will be under budgeted confidently,
Okay.
to be able to offset what you
Right.
confidently know will be over.
And up here, you can see that those figures are just based on.
No, these are.
Okay. Yeah.
Are any of these FEMA reimbursable? Or is that
Yes.
already separated?
Well,
out?
Pete
I
takes,
thought we moved some of that money.
But
You're right, but you
Yeah.
gotta move, some of them you gotta move for Charlotte.
But is this include them, or you've
I
already
only,
moved them out of here?
I only include it when I get the money back.
Yes,
Like,
minimum.
we spend the money and we get it back. Like, I think the last one, we only had $2,000 at the
Okay.
time. The other one,
Most of it's gonna be.
I will come to you, I think, next month with those transfer requests for both Sandy and for the Blizzard.
I mean, next month, we're gonna need to have a report on where we are, year to date, month to date,
Yeah,
you know,
I can
on
do it.
expenditures.
I have time, I can get into it.
But it's not,
One day was a little short.
Significant amount.
Contact
No,
the department.
But I think that'd be good to see, also see where you're gonna be.
Just gonna need it.
but there are some,
Shortfall,
right.
confidently, I don't wanna have to say you're gonna do it, then you run out.
Well, you're right, Tom, and that projection of 105 is only based on the numbers up until this date.
I got you. No, you know, things can happen.
Well, as a matter of fact, we have a guy who went out injured, he's gonna have surgery tomorrow, that wasn't in my prediction.
You're not aware.
It's not allowed. I'll tell him that he's not allowed. So far this year, we spent $55,808 on injury overtime. Normally, we spend about 40, so we're higher than normal. But that also goes back to, I don't know if you guys heard all the time, that when we're short a guy and then, or a person, then we lose a couple to injury, they just, that steamball just starts rolling. When we have no extra people on the shifts to make up for the people that are injured.
You know, I mean, I know you were here and you heard just what just.
I was in all companies, so I,
You know, 2 years ago, you were at 210, 205 for overtime, then 216. This year, you're at 260. I mean, eventually, you know, the door's gonna close. I mean, that's just, we're getting close to the floor. I mean, you're gonna come back and you're gonna say, we need money for a uniform, and you're gonna hear no. So you need to work with these line items and make sure that you're not putting extra dollars in these line items, because at the end of the year, you need to move $20, $30, $40, or $50,000 to your overtime account.
well, that's not the way, that's not the way that we do our budget.
But it's the way it works out every year. I mean, it just is. I mean, we move a lot of line items and we cover a lot of the shortfall in some of these budget items. And we're gonna do it again this year. I think the minute said you're spending $15,000 in OT every pay period.
Every 2 weeks, but that's like the average or something, that's the average from the beginning of the year. But hopefully,
It's a
we got
lot.
that guy getting off FFTO and probably.
Yeah.
a
No,
week
I
or
know,
two.
the
So that was
personnel issue.
But you know, like Doug said, we projected 2.5 at the beginning of the year. We meet, I can't tell you how many times a week we meet with the chiefs to try to save even $300, you know, I mean, maybe $300 each week adds up to, you're right, 15,000 is a lot. That was why when I started, I'm sorry.
No, it's all right.
That was why I started off saying, I don't get nervous when I say 105, because we do have some other residuals, I guess.
Well,
I don't say savings because.
Surplus, potential
Oh,
surplus. I mean, that's what you have. You're gonna have
Potentially
operational surplus.
underexpended.
I like that word better, potentially underexpended accounts due to, you know, and the main one is because we went to, you know, we went to Afghanistan, that's 70,000 plus whatever the cost, the savings is in the Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's kind of insurance, I don't know what that is, there's some savings there, but that's not from my position to tell you guys where to find the money, I was just pointing out that it's not as bad as the 105 probably sounds when you just have
No,
a
no,
construction.
like Tom says you'll make those suggestions to us next month, hopefully. 'cause
Or at
you'll
least
give us
start
an
thinking.
accounting
Yes,
of what,
yeah.
you know,
But
some of your
there are some of these items,
accounts that are heavy.
there are some of the ones that aren't my account, they're the town's accounts, like
Oh, Social Security, right?
Kerma, yeah, there's all those ones that.
Yeah, I-
obviously, federal government. Yeah, so,
You know, next to next to Board of Ed, the second largest, that's why.
that's why we come with,
You're second in line.
that,
And there,
keep what, that's why we track
he's
all,
third, so.
that's why we track all, that's why we track all the stuff each week. You know, I mean,
Well, hopefully, right, if the budget gets approved, you got another person, another salary in the budget, right? So that'll help the OT.
they'll help with it, and, you know, I mean, if you get, it's just, we didn't expect this guy to go out.
I mean, you had storms, you had OT, and you had things you have to do, we get it. It's
But I
just,
mean,
we need to pay attention to it, because there's expenditures, and which is what we were just talking about, is that we have all these expenditures, and we're hitting contingency, and we're hitting undesignated, and once you get to that point where you're at that $4.67 million mark, it's gonna be real hard to go below the policy that was set here to appropriate money.
almost every decision we make, I'm sorry, every decision we always check out, is it gonna cost money? And, you know, so, like, look at some of those items, Tom, we have surplus probably, in training, because we haven't had money to send guys to training. So is that really a surplus, or we
Just
just,
money you haven't spent.
because I
want to do it.
the overtime will go up, my training budget will go down, so what way would you guys like to see it?
I would define that as a surplus.
I would define it as keep it as close to the original budget as possible.
You said a surplus, so should I spend the training
Operation,
budget?
if you have dollars left over in your budget that are more than what you had planned to spend and what we presented to the town and the town approved, you have a surplus. And if you don't have enough, and we have to transfer money from different line items or different departments, then you have a deficit. It's- I think it really is that black and white.
But you understand what I'm saying, though, is I can't send you to training, it's gonna cost overtime, so I don't spend training money, it's not a surplus. I'm just trying to manage two line items at the same time, and one has to take precedent over the other.
Well, it begs the question about whether or not you have too many line items in your budget.
Well, I think we've talked about that. We're probably gonna consolidate
You
that,
know,
yes.
if we consolidate some of these line items, it gives you some more freedom to spend the dollars for your department.
Which is, a difference in the train of thought where it used to be was show us everything you.
Yeah, well, I mean, do you want to be micromanaged? I mean, I don't know if we're in the business of micromanaging. I would
I
expect
think
the
we
police
micromanage.
commission.
I think you guys micromanage yourself.
I think I'm very, so, and we just report to you what our micromanage, I don't think you guys ever, I mean, we take your suggestion all the time, you know, that's why we're here.
I don't know how to run a police department.
I don't know how to do your job either, so, that's why I just present this up to you, this is where we are. Obviously, you know, we try hard, Doug comes to our police commission here to, every decision's made, it's no longer.
I think you're doing a good job.
I appreciate that, that's clearly, 105 is a lot, Brad. I
No,
I live in pound two.
I know.
I'd like to be zero, but, you know.
It's not possible.
Well, I couldn't have.
If you're gonna be on one side, you wanna be on the plus side. Don't wanna be on the negative
No,
side.
so that's basically what we, and I'll come back next month.
We'll see you next
Yeah,
month.
I think I did that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Major.
Tell Todd we asked after him.
Okay.
All right. Reports. Finance Director's report, and all line item transfer requests. Reading bond.
Here's an expenditure report, here's a financial software implementation.
Is this a new software?
Okay.
This is the report I use, so this is all your guys. I don't know, if someone has a sample of the old one, I'll take a look at it.
No, it's just printed, it's a different font. It's the same thing.
We don't usually have the first page,
You don't usually-
but you're saving paper. Did you have a chance to look at this, or did you just print it out?
No, I looked through it. I really didn't see,
Usually.
anything that was really bad at this point. There's a few line items I want to look into to see why they're overextended or way underextended. But overall, everything looks pretty good here.
Yeah, there's one that jumps out at me, salaries for Wasan part-time, that's overexpended.
What page is that?
That would be page 10, if the number up at the top is correct.
No, that's the fund. It's on the bottom of the page.
Okay.
Well, it's on
Page
maintenance.
4, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Page
The
4,
part-time expenditures are over?
page 4 down there at, probably about 15 lines down.
The Wasam W.
Wasan salaries PT, part-time.
Part-time salaries.
Yeah, it's already 101% expended, so it's,
Yeah, there's a few line items in here that I'm gonna be talking to the department heads to see what we can do about them, do some transfers
you
and
still got 2
get them back
months
into
left.
the red, black.
William Stanley.
Memorial.
We got salaries, education, 117, that's on page 5.
So that too. That was the police department, we should nail him before he left.
Oh, you already showed us on part of it.
Yeah.
With the money, the extra money we've given you, you're okay for the balance of the year?
Yeah.
Because you're showing over.
The only thing I'm over
Well,
right
it's
now
definitely
is my
over.
snow overtime. But
Slightly over.
even when you bill 37,000, I'm only like 10,000 over, so we're just gonna refund.
Now, are they gonna give us, is that the snow removal over budget?
That's the overtime, yes.
Okay.
The sand and salt is fine. It's just the,
Yeah, it's the overtime for snow.
it's just the overtime, but like I said, 37,000.
You're only over 9. You're-
Right, so we're just gonna reimburse
Still ain't
that.
enough snow anymore.
Yeah.
On the 2 feet or less.
But actually, we came out pretty good, because we didn't blow the sand and salt budget, for the overtime only be over 9,000.
And you think of it,
General
going up
government
a big way.
administrative, this was.
It was a biggie, yeah, it was a biggie, but actually, that's the ones were just as expensive, sand and salt. Blizzard does the same as 60 sand and
So
salt.
this is not appropriate.
Yeah, it's just the time spent.
Yeah, it's just, it's a little bit different.
No, do we get any money back for the gas diesel over budget?
For the what?
Will we get any money for the gas diesel over budget as well?
But with that, I don't know if we built the school yet.
Oh, is that what that is?
Yeah, because that runs a
That's
deficit.
66, that's pretty good stuff.
Yeah, well, and you've upped it, I actually increased it this year when you did. $35,000, because they were on a deficit for 5 years. And then the school, we send periodically send bills to the school, the fire department, and the health district. And they reimburse us, so I'm not sure where we are in that process of reimbursement. We send the bills on routine,
Do you supply for the police too? Okay.
but we don't bill them. We bill the fire department because they have a revenue that supports their.
They have, yeah, I agree, yeah, they have.
We do the school because they have their own revenue stream, and we do CRAD because it's an independent agency.
Gotcha.
I don't bill myself,
But it's a
I don't
small
bill the town hall, and I don't bill them.
Oh, no, it's not that small, it's 2,000,
yeah, you're right.
200
But I
was.
give you the averages every year, whatever. How many gallons, it's pretty consistent.
Is it?
And 5, 6 years, it's amazing how consistent it is.
Yeah, the social service report.
Any other questions on the budget report?
No.
All right. Any line item transfers? No? All right. Dennis, anything on CEC?
Well, no, now that we're just waiting for the budget to either be passed or whatever. Matter of fact, I'll probably cancel this week's Thursday's meeting. Yeah, because we really can't do anything until we find out if the budget passes or not.
Municipal building?
Municipal Building Committee is moving right along, Mr. Chairman. As anybody can see, the bulkheads out here next to the OPD is finished. Great job done by the individuals.
Looks good, too.
Yep, and now the committee is now going to, we're tightening up some paperwork to send to the state, and then we will start across the street by the fire department with our next project on bulkheads. Also, the Elliott School window project is out to bid, and we're waiting, I guess, when we're getting them back, next week? Pete?
Yeah.
Next week we'll get, I think we had about, maybe 6 to
I
8,
think they come in this Wednesday, the 10th.
6 to 8 vendors. We did a walkthrough with them back about 10 days ago, so that's gonna be moving right along. This Wednesday night, the Morgan Building, the Municipal Building Committee will have a meeting at 5 o'clock over at the library. We've invited the trustees and their board, whatever, to also attend so we can introduce ourselves to them. But we will be taking care of the repairs of the library from now on. Any renovations or major repairs will go through the Municipal Building Committee. They have some items they'd like to have us address, so we will be over there from 5 to approximately 6. And then at 6 o'clock, we're going down to the police station, because the police department has asked us to step in and help them out. They have some issues down at their building that they would like to have the committee address and take over. Air conditioning, condensation, things of that nature, boiler. So the Municipal Building Committee is moving right along, and last but not least, the OPD itself will start work in earnest next week. There's been some preliminary work being done now. We've just done some ceiling knockdowns and things of that nature, but the builder, I believe, starts the 15th or the 16th in earnest.
Sweet.
And we're happy to hear that, we're happy to see that project get going, so. Quite frankly, they're moving along in 3 or 4 different directions quite well.
The streetscape also, Brad started something.
Mm-hmm.
Needs to be, and the salt shed is in process.
Cool. Morgan building?
Morgan Building Committee meets Thursday night, and we're moving right along. I guess we're on schedule for where we should be at this particular moment. Unless anybody has any specific questions.
When does spade go into the ground?
For what?
The first spade go in the ground?
Hopefully, it will be January, February of 14.
We've been getting financial reports.
We haven't got one in the last meeting, but I think 2 meetings ago. We get the finance reports now from our clerk of the works, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Mr. PMG.
Yep.
Our clerk of the works, and he keeps us abreast of what's going on. At this particular moment, we are on budget, again, back on budget. For a while there, we were just above it by $400,000 or $500,000, but adjustments have been made. And we are back in the budget for the building itself in the approximation of 51 million plus for the building. And then, of course, we have the soft costs and everything for,
Furniture,
what's that?
furniture and things. Computer.
Well, that will, that's all in, that's all in, no, that's all in the 51 million. Soft costs is usually, all these, design studies, if you will. Things of that nature, water testing, this, that. Moving on along.
Dennis, can I get copies of those financial reports on the job? Do I have them there?
I'm surprised you're not getting,
No, that's why I'm bringing it up. You gotta have somebody over there share those with the town.
I'll tell
okay.
It's important.
at PMG.
I guess so, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thanks.
We will definitely get them to you.
Park and recreation.
That was supposed to be me, I think.
I thought you were library.
I thought I did too.
Oh, good
Library and program. What do you want to say good for me when I?
Lucky you, that's right.
I'll get
No
back on
report?
this. No,
Okay,
sorry.
so, no, that's all right. So, there's probably not much going on, except the fields are probably ready and
We had some storm
baseball
damage
season's gonna be
that's
starting up.
been repaired, and will be referred to insurance and turn the irrigation on and get down beach and town marine and everything.
DPW, he's here. We've heard all night long. You reporting, any questions for him since he's here? Planning and steering committee you can remove next month, Mary, because I'm not going to those meetings. I don't even think they're having a planning and steering committee meeting anymore. They're now going to the planning and zoning commission's subcommittee on planning. Now, Mr. Smarty Pants has been invited. I have been invited. I have not gone yet, so. Police department, anything?
No.
The meeting's kind of.
They're going to honor a young lady named Jordan Ledyard, who was 13 years old and stepped up to the box down in Brantford, watching a couple of 80-year-olds being beat up. She stepped between them and took a lot of punches, but got them out of the way.
Nice.
And the Brantford Police Department is honoring her, and once they've done that, our police department is going to honor her. So it's good to see our young people are very courageous.
Accounting policy and procedures. I want to come back to that. Do you have anything to report?
No, but you know, we have to get involved with this new system because
Under new business.
that's our
Let's talk about that under new business.
yeah, that's our forte.
Economic Development Commission.
Well, that's like planning and steering.
Steerage? Yeah, let's cross it off. Fire department.
Well, things are going smoothly with the new rescue vehicle. There were a couple little hitches. Delivery, which was supposed to be in late April, early May, they're still on target, probably closer to May, end of May. It'll take a month once it's on site to I have pictures, by the way, too. I couldn't print them for some reason.
Okay.
There's one picture, there's the side, there's the back of the truck.
$800,000 free.
Chromie.
Yeah, it's,
Chrome, that's Chrome.
Is there boat in the water yet?
don't know.
Okay.
It is, I saw it.
Did you? Okay. Library? All right. You know, one of the things that has been bandied about a couple times is getting a liaison on the board of trustees.
There's a couple of reasons why I think that's a good idea.
Please share.
Well, we have one where they later.
It's you?
Well, you do, but I think it's, I think it's better to be able to see in, as I'm not sure exactly what you mean by liaison.
Somebody that, like Val, who is guaranteed at least, one telephone call a month to let us know what's going on with their operations.
This is a transparency thing, and a report to how things are run.
It's the
Yeah,
third or fourth largest appropriation that the town makes.
Right.
And we've had some situations, especially now that the municipal building committee is taking over, some of these projects, and we just want to make sure that we have an open
When
line of
did,
communication.
when did that come about? Your meeting on Wednesday, is that?
No, it was at a capital expenditure committee meeting where
Okay.
I was made aware
Yeah, it was
Some of those
initiated
issues.
about 2 or 3 months ago at a CEC meeting, and then
There's nothing nefarious
I
about
guess
it.
Willie
No,
followed
it
through
doesn't sound-
about a month ago, Peter, did he finally,
Send me a letter.
he sent you a letter about a month ago, Peter?
Yeah.
So, it's just something, it's something Val, as the liaison, can talk to. I'm not asking her to have a seat at the table of the board of trustees, but just to at least have the ability to speak to somebody, maybe Mr. Reynolds, maybe like that, whoever.
It can only benefit all of us, including, especially the library, if this information is free-flowing throughout the year.
One of my reservations is that I was grilled pretty strongly by people when I was appointed. And one of the issues was that it, brought up was that, I have absolutely no conflict of interest. I have no financial gain whatsoever, being on the library, no matter which way the budget goes. However.
Mr. Lilquist was a
I
member of this
think-
board for a very long time.
No, I know, but I think that the perception might not be, particularly since I'm such a new member, the perception might not be the greatest for me to be the liaison of the library as well as, when some people have a question about it.
Would you be hesitant to answer questions if you come from a library board and we ask you what happened? And would you be?
Oh, no.
Well, that's, I think, what we're looking for.
No,
is
and
someone
we
to
have
give us information.
minutes, we have, but absolutely no, I would not have a problem with that.
I think that's what we're looking for, right?
Okay.
Excuse me, Mike, did you say you have minutes
But the library
when you
board.
conduct your,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
are they accessible to?
Yeah, and,
Because that would be nice.
Mr. Carr actually brought it to our attention that we should be submitting the minutes to the town for publication on the website. So I
That's a good idea.
believe that has started,
Yeah,
and,
And we're already getting financial statements now. We started that
We
out.
have been for several years,
Yeah.
and we thank Mary.
Yeah, it's,
okay.
we're just trying to, it makes better, we can leverage the people, that we have on this board, and rather than have Val chase around, it's easier for you
No,
to be.
obviously, I'm gonna be
That's all,
there.
yeah.
As long as there's,
That's what so instead of library V9, it'll be you.
And it's nothing clandestine about
You
this.
see what we just did?
We're going to gather of information.
Just tell us what's going on.
We cut our responsibilities by 50%.
There you
Good.
go. And now you got, her smile is already wide.
It's hard to get all this stuff fit in. Okay, and then, all right, old business, any old business? No. All right, new business, I have an item. All right, I have an email dated March 28th, Bob gave it to us with all of our materials about the issues that came up. First thing that I would ask is, please include me and Doug on the distribution list.
Okay.
For the finance implementation. And
We have the state statutory regulation says the Board of Finance is responsible for the set of records.
so you need to be involved.
Gotta be involved.
So we should just.
Right, we only had one meeting and this is what came up.
Well, you'll invite me to the next.
We just want, we
It's
just.
staff training.
That makes sense.
That's okay.
Makes sense.
I haven't-
You can teach that old dog a new trick.
Maybe.
I foresee a situation where people on the Board of Finance are gonna be able to sign into this cloud-based thing and be able to
without a
go.
doubt.
Right,
Definitely.
it makes sense to
And
have
I'm
the
gonna try
vice
to.
chair go and.
Well, not you.
It makes sense for him to go and be.
I mean, we have training for staff, there's at least 30 days of training, of staff training for various staff.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I mean, we have, we have to do work there, we can't be philosophizing.
Are you saying I'm incapable?
Well, I'm just saying that it's a lot of work. It's not.
Good.
I'm sure you are grown adults and you guys can figure out how to work together.
We might be able to do it.
You know,
I'll
and
stop
if
by
there's
your
any
office.
problems, give me some feedback and give Willie
I'll
some
stop by your
feedback and
office, okay?
we'll address it, but I mean, it's a pretty poor reason.
What's that?
Not to include, him in the training.
How to enter
Well,
purchase
you just say
orders
you're
and
philosophizing and,
enter payroll. I mean, we're here to train staff.
well, he should learn how to do it. Right?
Hey, if you feel that way, that's fine.
Well, I mean, I kind of kept my mouth shut about how we're all unprepared for the meeting because you didn't do your job. And I've been nice about that, Bob.
Okay.
Okay. I mean, you serve at the pleasure to make sure that the finance board has the information that it needs.
What did I not do, or?
Our reports, we just were handed the year-to-date, month-to-date expenditure report for the Board of Finance meeting at the Board of Finance meeting.
Does that usually go out before?
Absolutely.
Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I apologize.
You were aware of it, but that's okay.
Do you have all of our emails?
I can get them from there.
And as far as all of the issues on here, you'll address these?
I'll address them.
Thank you. Any other new business? All right, motion to adjourn?
Do we want to go over any of these items?
He's gonna go over it.
We'll go over it.
Oh, okay.
So moved, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month. Auditors are coming next month.
Basketball game, Kathy.
Okay, you're scared who wins between Louisville and me too.
Yeah, I'd like to see Louis